My clock says 1 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jeff Geist. I'm the secretary for ANJEE, and I'm also joined by Ann Price, who is a volunteer and works at Water Spirit. We're excited that you're with us today for the workshop, Building a STEM and Agricultural Literacy Pipeline, as part of ANJEE's 38th Annual Winter Conference. Special thank you to our conference sponsors, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, an anonymous donor who is a friend of science and environmental education in New Jersey, and the Institute for Natural History Arts. We'd also like to thank our keynote speaker, our keynote sponsor, Nigerian Associates, and our award sponsor, Duke Farms and BASF, for supporting the field experiences. Anne is going to put the link to the YouTube channel in the chat, so you'll be able to watch the recordings as they get posted. It takes a little bit for them to all get processed and edited, but they will eventually get added to the YouTube channel, so you'll be able to see them there. And then a few reminders for the session. Please keep yourselves on mute throughout the presentation. If you have questions or comments, you can put them in the chat. And then if we have time at the end, we can go through some of the questions. And you'll be able to either raise your hand or we'll go through the questions in the chat. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our presenter, Christine. And during the session today, you're going to be able to learn how teachers can increase interest in STEM by supporting teacher development and K through 12 STEM pipelines. So Christine, you can go ahead and introduce yourself. I'm going to mute and take it away.
Great. Hi, guys. I'm just going to switch and present, and hopefully that's going to work so that I can see this. Great. And Jeff, can you just let me know if you can see my screen properly?
You have a big box in front of your picture right now.
All right. And it wasn't there before when I shared?
No, oddly enough.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to do that again then. And is the box there again?
It's like at the top part of it. Yep, now it's back. Can you try to advance the slide at all and see if the box goes away? It's just like a big, better. It looks like
it's the big, I think it's the like pause recording.
Yep.
And all that. Let me just see if I can make that smaller. Which I don't know how to do that. Let's see. Should I sound optimize? I'm going to stop and do that again. Sorry.
You had it right at the end. The boxes went away.
Oh, that's so funny. All right. Well, we'll do it again because I did not do the advanced sharing with the sound and optimize for video clips. Share sound. Okay. Let's try this one more time.
Looks good.
Yeah? Okay. All right. I'm going to go back. Then. All right. Let's get rid of that. I have one other thing to do, and you have to tell me if that gets in the way. Can you see boxes anywhere?
Nope, you look good.
All right, perfect. All right, hi, everybody. Thank you for being patient with the delay as we got everything started. My name's Christine Girtain, and I am from Toms River, New Jersey. I'd like to say I'm a Jersey girl, but I was born in Brooklyn, so forgive me for that. But I have gone K through 12 in Toms River in that school district, and then I also played basketball there. I left for a little while and went to TCNJ, which at the time was called Trenton State College. I was a part of the Tri Beta Honor Society, and I was able to actually go to England to do part of my student teaching. So that was a fabulous experience, and I was able to see their spiral science curriculum and make some, long-lasting friendships over there. I've been teaching in Toms River for 28 years, and I've taught biology, earth science, and I'm currently the director of authentic science research, which is a 3-year research class that I direct at 2 of the high schools. So pretty much I manage 50 so students that all have separate science fair projects that they're working on, but over a 3-year period that I meet with them during a regular class. I received my master's in instruction and curriculum in earth science because I had taught earth science for 22 years, and I'm on the executive board for the New Jersey Earth Science Teachers Association, which is affiliated with the New Jersey Science Teachers Association, as is ANJEE. Today, I'll be going through what I've tried to develop to feed students into my research class, and that is a STEM pipeline, and then also talking about not only making students more STEM literate, but also making them more agriculturally literate, and why that's become important to me. I'm actually going to go backwards through this pipeline a little and really talk to you first about teacher training and what you can do to, incorporate positive things for yourself as well as, other teachers. When we're nourishing ourselves, we're able to, nourish our students as well. So I'm asking everyone, and you can put comments in the chat. I'd like to hear, and have us share best practices with the other people that are on as well. How will you grow as an educator, and how will you help your students in your community grow to their full potential? And for me, that's been making connections with industry leaders and also with university leaders as well, and doing outreach through professional conferences and then also local conferences. And those partners are pretty important when you're going forward with student projects. Some of the professional societies that I would definitely recommend are both, for me, academic and then also in my town. So I'm a proud Rotarian, and we do a lot of outreach with the school. I'm the scholarship chair for that, and we try to make sure we're making opportunities for students financially, as well as an opportunity for them to present their research at our local Rotary group. The Sigma Xi is a research society that some of my students are able to participate with, as well as some of the other teachers in the school if they've published research of their own. I would also encourage you to make sure that you look in the specific areas that you're teaching and, reach out to the people and the industries that are in your area. BASF is in our town, so I have a nice relationship with them. Some of my students have done bat research there. And also looking at national groups, and Finiscope is a group that's a partnership through NASA and also Arizona State University for things that are related to earth science as well as space, space and astronomy. And then Ag2Pi, there are a lot of university leaders in that trying to look at the genetics to make sure that they can protect crops and livestock in the agricultural area. MNT is a group that is involved in nanotechnology, and CUBES is actually a group of college professors, both community college and then also universities. But they welcome high school teachers, and there's a lot of really good training on there. And I've made a lot of great colleagues across the country getting involved with that group. So I encourage you to look for those types of group within whatever area you're teaching, whether you're environmental or science, biology, any of those things. The Army Education Outreach Program, this is an opportunity one of the math teachers at my school took advantage of this year, and I've been involved in it for the past 3 years. So this is a paid position that you can apply for, and it's a research experience for STEM educators and teachers. So you can be an educator that is in an informal session, so you could be at Duke Farms, so Jeff, you could do this. And it's a division of the Army Education Outreach Program. And it's designed to provide high school teachers, middle school teachers, and informal educators with an authentic summer research experience, participating at any Army research laboratory, so that you can then bring those materials and that experience back to whatever your present job is. I've learned a lot, implicit bias. They've gone into different aspects of research, and I've been able to review a research book I had used in the past that was then updated, and just educational phenomena that I hadn't been exposed to before that really helped increase my overall reach with students and make me a more well-rounded teacher, I would say. So there are lots of opportunities, including the Junior Science and Humanities Symposium, where your students can compete if they have science fair projects in high school, or an introduction to eCyber Mission. eCyber Mission is for, I believe it's 6th through 9th grade, but I know it ends in 9th grade. And I've been wanting to try to get some 9th graders involved with that, where they have to solve a problem in their local town, and then they can compete with that. One of the teachers, Charlene Wallace at our high school South, she had 3 teams enter for the first time just before COVID, and they placed 2nd and 3rd in the state, and they actually got savings bonds, which was really nice. I would also really encourage you to increase your network by using Twitter. A lot of the scientists are on Twitter, and they get social credit for responding to you. So if you send out a tweet and ask a question, everybody gets to see the scientist respond to the kids or respond to the teacher. And that's not the case if you're sending an email. It's very easy for them to ignore you if you're emailing the scientists. LinkedIn, really develop that as your personal and online resume. You'll never know when that can help you, or when you can make a connection with, again, a scientist in an area or another educator in a different area. That can be a resource for you. And then for me, I really like using Skype a Scientist. You can request specific scientists that are on a list, so you can look at their backgrounds. It's for free. They're already engaged in outreach. They've signed up because they want to talk to your students. And very often they're available after they've done the session with you to answer student questions on projects if you have any of them pursuing different research projects for science fairs. Nourish the Future. I started getting involved with agricultural literacy about 2 years ago, and this was the first group. They're funded by the National Corn Growers Association, and food insecurity, really, growing that establishment of making sure we know where our food comes from and that it's available for all people is super important. So this group is specifically engaged in taking regular science teachers, so not agriculture teachers, and there are 4% of the high schools around the country have an ag science teacher. So they're trying to reach that 96% of science teachers that aren't traditional ag teachers, so that they can put in agricultural themes into their regular classrooms. This website, and I have a whole link, and we'll post this later for everybody so that you can have links to it. But if you Google Nourish the Future, you can find the links for different ag curriculum so that you can see things on soil. They do a whole bunch of stuff with soil. They also do things with biofuels. And it's been a great resource for me and to educate me in putting in a different lens, right? Instead of just looking at science through a human disease lens, looking at it through a lens of disease also in crops and livestock. Nourish the Future sponsors teachers for free to go what's called to the Commodity Classic. And so the Commodity Classic is in a different place each year. And you get to take a look at all of this, engineering of all of the equipment that's there, as well as learning about crops. Specifically, I didn't know what sorghum was. So this was, this Commodity Classic is corn, wheat, sorghum, and something else that I'm forgetting. But we got to meet with teachers from all over the country, and we got to learn about the different commodities. We got to speak to scientists that were there, as well as farmers that were there. And one of the teachers I brought with me from Tom's River, who's a middle school teacher, she does a project with aquifers, and her students all adopt an aquifer, and she was able to find farmers that lived on each of those aquifers who now she's exchanged information with and can bring those farmers into the classroom to speak to each of the students about the aquifer that their project is on. It just makes a really more robust experience for the kids. As we go through talking about different ways that you can incorporate agricultural literacy, one of the things that you can do is, if students have heard of autosomal recessive traits like cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia or Tay-Sachs disease, they might not know about what's called double muscle cattle. And for double muscle cattle, this happens because of a recessive mutation in several beef breeds, including the Belgian blue cattle. And so this double muscle or muscular, what's called hypertrophy, these cattle, they have a deletion in the myostatin gene, creating more muscle fibers, and it increases their muscle weight. The body fat deposits and the intracellular muscle fat deposits are reduced approximately 60% of what's normal, which is really desirable in the meat producing animals that they're picking. And farmers have seen this over the years, and they bred these cattle on their own. So it's not genetically modified. You know, this was just natural selection by the farmers in breeding these different cattle, but they're massive. And that's just one of the storylines that you could incorporate instead of just teaching that part of genetics through the lens of human disease. Another thing when we go through is that most students have heard of MRSA, right, as a staph infection that's difficult to treat because of antibiotic resistance. But I'm working with a nonprofit group that's called Seeds of Change to do bioprospecting work, teaching students to look for new antibiotics in insects. And some of the insects, like leafcutter ants, they carry a bacteria on their exoskeleton, and they don't have any cases of antibiotic resistance in their colonies. So historically, the bioprospecting effort has been focused on isolating antimicrobials from soil samples with a success rate in the order of 1 in 100,000. And this training will focus on learning how to isolate those antimicrobial candidates that live symbiotically on or within insects. And the research scientists are finding that the bioprospecting that is using insect-derived samples has a much higher likelihood for success, something like 100 to 100 times more likely to be found in those insects than in the soil. So we're going to have our students working on that, and that's something that, you know, teachers could do everywhere. Are there any questions in the chat, Jeff, that I should address now before I continue?
Nothing yet. Just Derek from Rutgers said the Rutgers School of Public Health doesn't use Twitter anymore, as just an FYI.
I know there's a big Twitter no-go, right? Because they're going to make us pay. I appreciate that. And Derek, if you could put in what you do use, that would be super helpful. So thanks. Yeah, I'm going to be very sad when people leave Twitter, I have to say. I like using it. I like the ease of use, but that's my own little mantra, right?
Looks like they use e-news, approved by school and Department of Education.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
I'll have to look into that. That's helpful.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt your presentation.
That's fine,
I used
please.
the chat. My dean has very strong opinions on Twitter right now.
Sure.
While he and a few of the other center directors use it frequently, we have always just done e-news the way I mentioned. And so at a big university like Rutgers, we have a whole media group, but Twitter has pretty much been a no-go as of a few weeks ago. Just
I gotcha. That's super helpful, Derek. I appreciate that. E-news, right? You said?
Yeah, basically we were using My Newsletter Builder, but we're switching to Constant Contact as it has more functionality. But again, that's, you know, because DOE approved those tools, and honestly, we're the newsletter for them when it comes to safety and health stuff statewide.
Perfect. Thanks for that. All right, the other threats, and again, when we talk about antibiotic resistance in humans, most of the time, you know, that's what the students are hearing about. But you're also having this happen in fruit crops such as apples and peaches in the United States. There's a widespread resistance to a staph infection that they get. And that's also happening in nurseries and orchard environments. So currently there's a fungus called Fusarium, and that took out the banana that our great-grandparents ate before 1950. And it's now attacking the Cavendish banana, which is the banana that you guys all know and love, the yellow banana the kids draw. And it's predicted to wipe them out so that our common store-bought banana variety will change. Seeds of Change is the group in Costa Rica that I work with, which I'll show you some things on a little later. And it's a nonprofit that will train the teachers to do bioprospecting and look for these new antibiotics that I was talking about and candidates from insects. We had teachers from 4 different states come for training last February. And it was fantastic. So I thoroughly enjoyed that, and it opens up a lot of opportunities for my students. Going back and talking, how do we wind up teaching and start to interpret and statistically analyze graphs that use agricultural themes or STEM themes to expose students to new storylines in STEM and also in agriculture. So we do that in our school district using a thing called Data Classroom, and it has activities for analyzing data with students, and they will be adding like beef and pork data as well, because I made that request. And they currently have an activity that's called Cash on the Cob, where the students investigate corn plant density and yield. And it's from an actual paper. So they took a research paper, they got access to all of the data, and then they stepped the students through that graphing and also through that statistical analysis so that the students can predict, how many plants per hectare will give us the highest gross profit margin. And that's someplace around, I think, 12,480 within that graph. And the students wind up going through a series of activities to explore those questions. And again, you could be teaching graphing with all different types of themes, but if we start to incorporate agriculture in that, then our students have that as a possibility for jobs, whether that's genetics, embryology, engineering, computer software. There are lots of jobs in agriculture that the students aren't aware of. I live in a beach community. My kids are surfers and also, work at the boardwalk. I did not know that popcorn is a separate plant from the corn on the cob that we eat and buy in the store. And most of the people in my school don't know that. So if you did not know that, I would like to see you say that in the chat. If that is new information to you, I'm curious as to, our people that are here with us today for the conference, because that blew my mind. I just thought it was a process you did to corn. I didn't know that you actually grew a whole separate plant. The cob looks different, and it makes sense, but that is the level of our agricultural illiteracy. And we will have 2 billion more people on Earth by 2050. That's the prediction. And we'll have to feed those people on the same amount of land that we are currently feeding them on. I think it's important when we're talking about graphs to make sure that the students are explaining both the X and Y axes. And that's something that Dr. Erin Reedy does really well. And there's a video that goes with this that the teachers can watch ahead of time in order to familiarize themselves with the activity. He's also done a video for me where he goes through all of the visualizations within a journal article on lizards that he did. So that if anyone wants copies of that in the future, I'll share my email later, and I'd be happy to share that with you guys as well. Nourish the Future led me to the American Farm Bureau, and the American Farm Bureau actually sponsors teachers, again, to travel across the country for free. So the first year I took high school teachers to Tennessee to tour the beef industry from birth to death. And we got to see feed coop distribution plants. We saw 3 sister cows that were born to 3 different birthing mothers because those mothers were better at birthing, but not genetically at making cows that were better for tastier beef. So that is an interesting approach that we learned about. And we got to network with teachers and groups from across the country. So you can apply for this. The application is now open to go to Colorado. And again, they will pay for your a driver to take you to the airport. They will pay for your flights, and they will pay for your hotel so that you can come learn about agriculture. The second year I took middle school teachers to Oklahoma, and we got to visit Lopez food distribution plant and processing plant, and we got to see chicken nuggets made. And I can honestly say that there is only chicken in the chicken nuggets. I watched every step of that and every ingredient that went in there, and it was just chicken and then the breading. So that was kind of cool. One of the other things that we did was we visited a working farm where they do environmental outreach. So they showed us some stream tables that were there. They did some work with macro invertebrates. And then we also got to visit UT Martin. The other place was Lone Oaks Farm. And they showed us how they do artificial insemination. And we actually got to practice that. And that's what's in this picture here, on cadaver parts of a cow, which I never thought in a million years I would be artificially inseminating parts of a cow. But we learned a lot. The cervix is very small. That is a very hard thing to navigate, and the farmers are doing it all the time. That's the macro table, again, that we got to take a look at the health of that pond that was in that area. One of the other things the students have been able to do is the Danforth Center in Missouri is the largest plant research center in the United States, and they have what's called a corn genome to phenome project that's pictured on the right-hand side there, where you're given 3 different genetic varieties of corn, and you take a look at the leaf angle, because they're looking for natural selection and what genetics affect how tight that leaf angle is, so that they can plant more corn plants on the same amount of land to increase the yield. And that goes with that data classroom project that I spoke about before. One of the students in my research class was able to do a virtual summer program at the University of Illinois and took a look at digital image processing, and was able to use computer science and programming to analyze images of hogs and also crops, and be able to take a look at the health of those crops and livestock. And he never thought about the fact that computer science is used in agriculture. And he goes to Princeton now, and now he knows that that's definitely an option for jobs for him. Now going into the baseline of the pipelines, I'm going to jump back a little bit. We use Camp Invention to get our kids in the summer engaged in STEM. I really like bringing the students together for that when they're younger, so they get a sense of who I am. And I'm not this stranger. I'm really tall. I'm 6 foot tall. So some of the kids are scared of me, right? When they come, and I'm like, come take my class. I had a kid visibly shake in front of me once when we had our individual meetings for research. It was very bizarre because I had taught the kid a whole year for earth science. And he said it was very different when you're one-on-one with a teacher for things. But Camp Invention, we usually have about 100 students. And I also use about 20 high school students. So this is great if you don't have one in your area. It's a great option for bringing curriculum into your area that maybe you haven't been exposed to before. As a director, I find the teachers from my district, the teachers are paid by Camp Invention. I'm paid by Camp Invention. A parent can bring a camper for free if they volunteer as the camp parent, or if you're a parent volunteer, you can get 100 off. We started this, I guess, 6 or 7 years ago. It was about $250. I think it's up to $280 now per camper. And I've been lucky because the Navy has funded underserved students for me each year. And last year they funded 26 students to attend that camp. Some of those students are actually in that picture. They were campers that were sponsored 8 years ago. And now I'm really proud to say that they are research students in my class at High School South. So that was exciting for me to see the investment and the time that I put into building that K through 12 STEM pipeline really, coming to fruition as those students trickled up from elementary school to the activities I did with them in middle schools to now the high school level.
Christine, someone was asking, is this at all related to ANJEE steam tank, which was in part supported by the U.S. Army until 2021?
So ANJEE steam tank is a name that I've only heard in the last 6 months, and I'm not familiar with it before someone asking me, hey, do you do this? And so this is an AEOP program. So it's an Army Education Outreach Program, which the steam tank isn't, only because I know the programs that are listed under there. And so it has partial funding from the Patent and Trade Office, and it is linked to the Inventors Hall of Fame. So the students are learning about patents and they're learning about intellectual property. I don't know a lot about that steam tank thing, but I've been trying to look into it to see if it's still going and then how I get my students involved. So I hope, did that answer your question? My person in the chat.
I think that might be part of the New Jersey School Boards Association.
Ah,
That helps you find out.
yeah. Because someone brought that up. I was at a New Jersey STEM Pathways meeting, and a woman came up to me about the steam tank, and I haven't had the bandwidth to go back and look it up. But I'm glad that you brought it up again, because I feel like, you know, those things happen for a reason. When you've heard something and then someone else brings it up someplace else, that kind of synchronicity, I meant to look into that steam tank. Thanks so much, Anna. All right, I'm going to play this video real quick so you get a sense of the types of things that are done here in case this is something you want to do in your area. And I'm going to unmute it.
Rewards at Camp Invention in Farm Tech. Students design their very own high-tech farm with machines that will prepare soil, pollinate crops, and even launch bales of hay. With the help of a programmable robot and creative problem solving, kids will discover the ins and outs of innovative farming. From piggies in the pen challenges to sledding lawnmower races and cow milking moo-a-thons, campers are sure to have a squealing good time. Discover innovation with world-changing inventors. Only at Camp Invention, where big ideas become the next big thing.
And so that,
Learn more
that
at
is
invent.org/ Get ready to plant the seeds of the future
trying to
in
move forward. So that Camp Invention, again, we use it as the base to try to get the kids meeting some of those teachers that they would have in middle school and high school. I have a high school physics teacher that teaches it, and some middle school teachers. And the high school students are the leadership interns, and they bring the kids into each of the classrooms to the teachers. So they navigate them through the halls. And they get community service hours for that count for National Honor Society, like across the country. And like I said, so this camp is many places across the state, but they didn't have any in Ocean County until we started it in Toms River. And now I'm really happy to say there's 5 or 6 in Ocean County. So look in your area, it might be there already, or maybe this is something that you could do. I've been very happy with the curriculum over the years. As we move into middle school, I pretty much harassed Cold Spring Harbor for 3 or 4 years until they would train me. So they are out in Long Island, and they have what's called a DNA Learning Center. And they have these fabulous camps, DNA barcoding, biocoding. They have a Fun with DNA camp. I did an intro to biotech where I taught the kids how to micropipette and use electrophoresis equipment in middle school, and then a World of Enzymes camp. And I got some sponsorship from Mini One, which is a company whose electrophoresis equipment I use. They actually flew out from California, met with the kids, saw the camp, and it was super successful. The kids did not like the smell as they were, making cheese, because that's curdling, right? So you can see them covering their noses in the image. And they got to look at enzymes from liver, and also, like I said before, to learn a little bit more about what enzymes are and what they do. So I've used that for the middle school because I have some background in biotech, so that was an easier lift for me. I'd love to incorporate more engineering things in camps for students, but right now this is how I run it for the middle school kids. So a lot of the Camp Invention kids have come up into the middle school camps, and then they feed into the high school camps. The biocoding, they learn to use Python in order to analyze DNA sequences, use the Python to convert the DNA sequence into RNA, and then to convert the RNA into protein sequences. So they're learning about that central dogma, as well as getting a taste of Python and what it can do and how it can make their reach and what they want to do with data or with sequences more robust in those analyses. The DNA barcoding, I actually had 12 kids get published for DNA that they extracted from mosquitoes. So we partnered with the Ocean County Mosquito Commission, and you can reach out to your own mosquito commission, and they have to collect mosquitoes and do testing on them. So they always have leftovers. And they came in and they taught the kids how to use dichotomous keys in order to identify midges, crane flies, and mosquitoes, and then the specific mosquitoes for their species within the mosquitoes. And then the students extracted DNA from those and looked at a specific barcode that would then confirm whether they were correct using the dichotomous key and identifying that species. They confirmed it genetically. So it was phenotyping and genotyping for the DNA barcoding. And then because you don't get a lot of kids catching mosquitoes right outside and then doing projects where they're extracting DNA, a lot of the sequences they found were novel and they got published. So now these high school kids are published on an international database called NCBI, and they get to put that publication on their resume when they go to college. So that was pretty empowering for them. And you know, they were excited. My son did part of it. He got grossed out by the mosquitoes when they poured them on the desk, because I brought him along as a 5th grader, you know, just to see some of that dichotomous key stuff. But again, exposing your students to things maybe that they didn't know were possible might get them excited about a whole different direction in science that they didn't know existed. And that's what I'm trying to do by building these pipelines.
Christine, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go for it. Interrupt at any point, guys.
There was, the question was asking about the enzymes. Do you ever use enzymes that are plant-based for the kids in the class who might be vegetarian?
Plant-based enzymes. So I don't know enough about the enzymes, I'm sorry to say, about what their sources were. You know, we ordered them from a company, and they were restriction enzymes in order to cut specific parts of the DNA when we did a restriction digest in that class. And then the other enzymes, like we used liver. I went and bought liver, and there are enzymes in the liver that, you know, will, and I forget what we did this pre-COVID, so you have to excuse me. I forget specifically what we did with the liver enzymes. But I know that we used enzymes in order to break down the lactose in milk to make it lactate milk. And so the students did that. So I don't know enough about the source of those enzymes. I'm sorry about answering that question. Other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. And if you have information, whoever asked that question about the plant-based enzymes, none of the kids raised that question. So I didn't have any kids that were concerned or thinking that maybe they were just animal derived. And they didn't seem to have a problem with the liver, because that was animal derived. Yeah, let me know, because I'd love to know more about that. Put that in the chat, please. The Waksman Student Scholars Program is another way students can get published for DNA sequences that they do. And this has an environmental end to it, because they're using duckweed. And students can get trained in the summer for free if the teacher goes for training, but there's also a paid aspect if they want to pay to go to this training if the student's school doesn't actively participate. Our teachers were trained, and so we're allowed to send one student from each school each summer up to Rutgers for 2 weeks of training on how to do the DNA extraction and the restriction digest and PCR. So the duckweed can grow pretty much in a cesspool, right? It doesn't need clean water. Oh, and my slide is a mess there. Sorry, I apologize. So it has a great potential for biofuels, and it has a high starch content. So the Department of Energy is looking at duckweed as a source for biofuels. And it can sink to the bottom of the pond, you know, depending upon how much starch content is in there. And it can easily be converted, that sugar, for fermentation. So they have very many uses that they're looking into it. And this specific subspecies of duckweed, to my understanding, wasn't fully sequenced yet. And so they farmed it out as a student project. And the students then, after they're doing some of this extraction, what happens is that the Rutgers will insert the duckweed genes. They break up the genome into E. coli to use the E. coli to make lots of copies of it. And they insert it inside what's called the LAC-Z gene that makes this blue color. And that blue color gets interrupted and is a white colony if the plasmids, or those, you know, sequences, have been inserted properly into the E. coli genome. So the students pick those white colonies, and then they grow those in liquid media, and then they do the PCR and digest to take a look at the size of the inserts of the duckweed genome. And then they look at their PCR, see if it confers with the restriction digest, and then they send those sequences out for sequencing with Rutgers. They send those out for us in mass. And then afterwards, the students go through a whole bunch of bioinformatics pipelines in order to compare their sequence with known sequences in other plants to then predict what the function is of that sequence. Is it making a protein that has a specific function? Is it only partially coding for a protein because maybe you didn't get the whole thing? Or is it a non-coding section of DNA that was inserted in there? That's probably some of the best biotech training that I've had as a teacher, and definitely led me to pursue other training with UMass Amherst on biotech. The students finish with a poster where they present, their findings on their specific protein, and they can actually 3D print that protein as well with a project that Rutgers does with them as a follow-up. Seeds of Change, I took students to Costa Rica in 2017 to do research on leafcutter ants and the fungus that they farm. This is also the same group that trains teachers on how to extract DNA from insects to look for new potential antibiotics. And they're tiny, they're adorable. They cut pieces of leaf and bring it back to their colonies in order to feed the fungus that's in their colony. So they farm that fungus for fruiting bodies that then they use as a food. So they are little farmers themselves. They are a pest in agricultural areas, but the students got to learn a lot again about antibiotic resistance, gram-negative, gram-positive bacteria, and then also about the leafcutter ants themselves. What was nice is the students also got to meet students from Texas that were on the trip with us. They got to go horseback riding, so they would do science all in the morning, some days a whole day of science, and then we would have breaks in the afternoons of other times where we toured national parks there. We went to a woman's home who got a grant from the government in order to make a big cooking training area, and she taught us how to make an authentic meal. So it was a very nice, well-rounded experience for the students, and then they present their research that they do while they're there at the end of that 10 days. Going into nanotechnology, there is an option for students and teachers to be able to remotely access instruments for nanotechnology, and that's called the RAIN network, and that's on the bottom left. So this nano site is just called the NAC network, and that group is from Penn State and a whole bunch of actually other colleges around the country. Caltech is one of them. So one of my students got to actually dissect guts from fish that fishermen gave us from different points in the waterline. So from deep bottom feeders, then also to mid-level, and then surface feeders. And she took a look in those guts for plastics. And she found some what we call nurdles, or little beads that were, macro size, shipped those off to Caltech. And part of the grants that they have is that they have to do student outreach. So then she was able to remotely use the Raman spectroscopy and a scanning electron microscope to analyze those beads to see what plastic they were. And I remember one of them was nylon. I don't remember what the others were. But she used Zoom, and through Zoom, she could take control of this, millions and millions of dollars of instruments to analyze it herself. And that researcher spent an hour and a half with her one-on-one going through, explaining and talking to her about the instruments after she had done some reading on her own. So there are a lot of options depending on what you want to do. With the plastic that she sent, there was also a pollen grain. And so we got to use the scanning electron microscope on the pollen grain. So I could definitely see that for environmental teachers if they wanted to collect different types of pollen and just expose their students to microscopy. They're able to, use that on their own, or you could do a whole class setting and then give students access, who's your leader in the class that's going to get to use that. They also do training for teachers, and I was able to meet a New Jersey teacher during that training who they put us together because we were both from New Jersey. So it was pretty powerful outreach for both you in your own learning and then also for your students. ForUsGirls is a foundation that is an international not-for-profit. Sorry, I have different things popping up all over the place from the state on reminders. Is an international not-for-profit organization that provides innovative skills and leadership development programs and opportunities for underserved and underrepresented young women, specifically girls that are aged 10 through 25. And their founder, Aminka Delfka, she was born in Jamaica and raised in Ontario, Canada, but she works in New York City with a lot of the companies that were there. And Tom's River was able to go up and participate in this program with our students. So some of our students in that photo are actually presenting about their Waksman Student Scholars Program and the protein that they had analyzed and isolated from the duckweed. And then they learned a lot about the United Nations sustainability goals, which they hadn't really known about before. It also talked to them about how to build their leadership skills and how to be powerful women in STEM. So I really enjoyed going to that with the students. Any questions? Because I am coming up on finishing up and showing some of our some of our resources here. So I can stop for questions real quick before we good? Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Hopefully people can still hear me and I'm not frozen.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand and interact a little bit, we can do that too.
Well, I don't have a question, I have a comment.
Sure.
And there were 7 out of 13 that did not know that sweet corn and popcorn were different.
See that? Like, that's a large amount, right? And that it blows my mind. And I'm curious whether those teachers like grow up on a farm or live in the counties in New Jersey that have a lot more agriculture. Because in Ocean County, I'm telling you, that number is like 90% of the people that have no clue about that with the corn. And it's a silly thing, right? But I think it's an easy one to grasp and to give to students as an example. So as being a state teacher of the year, I get to tour schools. So if anybody would like me to come visit their schools, please, I'll have my contact information at the end here. Please reach out, elementary, middle school, high school. For the elementary schools in March, I'll be bringing books that have won the American Farm Bureau's Book of the Year and reading those to elementary school students. And one of the things I'll do with the upper level elementary school students is I'm going to bring corn kernels that are both dried from sweet corn and dried from popcorn and have them experiment with putting them in the microwave and seeing what happens. And also then, because I'm going to have them in paper bags when they pop, I have sensors that can read the humidity and temperature inside the bag after the fact. And I'm curious to see if there's a big difference in the humidity, because supposedly the popcorn has a higher percentage of water vapor trapped in the kernel, and that's what makes it pop. So I think that would be neat for them to take a look at that and then learn and take a look at the cobs and how they're different, and then let them know, hey, one of these is actually popcorn, and this is, the corn on the cob, the sweet corn that you usually eat. I put the links here and I'll share this again, hopefully. Are the ANJEE people, are you guys putting the PowerPoints on the website, or how's that going to work?
We have the recordings are going to go up on the YouTube channel, but if you want to send me the presentation, I can also make that available.
Right, to attendees, that would be great. Yeah, that way they can have the links and get to these. So this, again, Nourish the Future, Seeds of Change, ForUsGirls, and the Waksman program are some of the things that you can use. The story for the, at the top, for the, I don't know, I think that's at the top is for the Belgian blue. Sorry, I should have labeled that, but I think that's the link for the information on the Belgian blue cattle. And then, oh, I got one more. And then, oh, there's the Belgian blue one. And then data classroom, that's there, some of the nano stuff. So I grouped it. I tried to group it a little bit on what goes together. And then that's my contact information. Although my Twitter Is the Twitter logo a little too low? Please email me, reach out, ask questions.
Melanie, if you would prefer to unmute, you could. Would you like to ask your question?
I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, I didn't know if we were running out of time. Gosh, what a absolutely incredible amount of work that you do that is so complex and fabulous for your students. So thank you so much. You got so much into your presentation. And so when you were going through your camp program and it was about high-tech farming, I was just curious about sustainable farming and no-till and, just the, build the kind of farming where you build soil and, and like, agricultural impacts to climate change.
And so the module, Camp Invention, is different every year. And I just happened to highlight one of the things that they had as the module because I had this ag theme in here. A lot of times it's engineering where they're taking apart a robot, or in the past they used to take apart VCRs and people would donate old VCRs. So for the Camp Invention itself, it's different every year. That specific one, I honestly don't remember if they went into anything with soil because it was very specific on giving them a little coding thing and talking about how you herd animals and that this is what the dogs are doing, right? That are herding the animals, or when you're herding them with horses, and you can model this and learn about coding with your little, bot. So it was using that bot in that theme to teach about herding, and then also talked about milking, and then how you balance what you're going to purchase for your farm equipment. So they had to do different things to earn money, and then they had to pick when they designed their farm, like what they were going to use their money for, to buy different things for their crops or to buy different things to use things. So it was more of like a, how should I say, like a design process, and that specific one wasn't. For other things we do, like the Nourish the Future and On the Farm, they go into, there's a whole thing on soil, how to feel the soil and know like how much moisture it is, how in North Dakota and South Dakota, they actually have to do partial tilling where they're tilling the row or the soil doesn't warm up in time for them to actually be able to have a planting season. And so they don't till the whole thing. And they go into that with the teachers. In some areas you want to do no till period. In other areas, you wouldn't have crops if you don't do partial tilling because of that growing season. So I didn't know that. I had no idea about the growing season thing. So that stuff is covered, but that year in Camp Invention, no, and it's different every year for Camp Invention.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And for anyone else that's out there, there's what's called the New Jersey Ag in the Classroom Coordinator for the state. And I have been teaching 28 years, and I didn't know that existed until 2 years ago when I got involved in agriculture. So anyone that's already involved in agriculture knows this, but the rest of the science teachers don't. And I've become good friends with Carolyn Etch. She's ours from New Jersey, and Chris Fleming in Tennessee. I've become good friends with.
Laura McMahon has her hand raised because she's so polite and wonderful.
Oh, Laura, you can just unmute. Hello, Laura.
Can I just interrupt? So yes, my name is Laura McMahon. I work with BASF, and we have partnered with Christine for her Authentic Science Research program. And I am just so impressed with how many unique opportunities that you provide for your students. And it's really fabulous that you tried to condense them all down into this slide presentation to provide them to others. It seems like the beginning of all of these opportunities begins with a connection and making a connection with someone. I just want to tell people, don't be afraid to reach out. I work at BASF Toms River. I'm an environmental scientist, but I have developed an environmental outdoor education program where we assist area high schools with mostly field experiences that they need. And it all started with an area high school teacher who needed a field experience. He just happened to call the site manager and say, hey, I can see you have a big piece of property here. We would like to do some research. And that led to us, we bought them all of the equipment. We supported them in, busing and things like that. And that was actually the start of our entire program. And it all started with one person who said, well, let me make a few phone calls. So we're in our 6th year of running this program. So even if you have an idea that you might be able to partner with a company or even sometimes a private property owner, reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. And even if you don't get a response the first time, reach out again, because you never know where that phone call or that email might be forwarded to. I just happen to be a former wildlife biologist who would try to incorporate environmental education into my research. So it was a kind of a lucky stroke, but it all started with that phone call from that teacher. So don't be afraid to reach out, even if you think they're going to say no.
And that's how I got connected with Laura, because that school district, we were brought in to see that project by that school district. And then I had a student that did a BAT program. And Laura, I'm on a laptop from the Department of Education. And I tried to find my pictures for the BAT stuff to get this in here, but I'm in Florida right now because I was visiting schools in Florida. And I had to change around schedules for things. And I had lunch with the state teacher of the year for Florida. So I do apologize for that, because I tried hard to find that, but I got the logo in there for BASF.
Good.
I don't have those pictures on this laptop.
Yep, and it was a deer population study done by Manchester Township High School. They presented to ANJEE, and this is how I even came to know anything about ANJEE. And now we're supporters of that organization as well. Everything seems to be about making connections and reaching out to a person.
It is pretty powerful. Is everybody high school who are teachers, that are like classroom teachers, or middle school? What's the breakdown? And just unmute. There's not many. Well, I guess there's 20 of us. I guess there's a lot. Anybody? Oh, we got vegan cheese links. I like this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone here who is formal education? We'll start there. Yeah, I think we're all informal educators.
Oh, that are on right now. That's interesting. Okay.
Oh, sorry, I'm formal. I didn't hear that last part. I would be considered formal education.
But yeah, but you're college, correct?
Yeah, but a lot, yes, but a lot of my grant work is to run the statewide safety and health program for all teachers, administrators, and in some cases, students of career and technical ed in both local and county level districts.
Oh, that's great. And specifically, what safety stuff?
So I'm gonna actually have one presentation about part of what we do later. But the safe, I'll put a website in the chat box, that way people can take a look for themselves. But it's we manage, if you add the teachers and students together, about 24 courses. Some are career cluster specific, some are about wage and hour, some are about child labor in general. The newest ones are about human rights and peace literacy, climate change, etc. So
gotcha. I definitely always look for partners for grant writing, and a lot of the colleges, it's nice when they write in outreach to high schools. Yeah, so if anyone ever wants to partner on a grant, please contact me. I would be happy to partner with you and get my students involved with whatever you're doing at your site.
All righty, we have a couple minutes left, so we're going to start closing out. Unless Laura, if you just unmuted, do you have anything else?
I do. I kind of wanted to put in a plug for ANJEE membership. Connections. We were talking about connections. When you become an ANJEE member, you will become part of a network where you can reach out. You can send messages to other members and saying, hey, I have an interest in this type of study. Has anybody done something like this? And how did it work out? So that comes with the ANJEE membership. So if anybody's interested in learning a little bit more about those benefits, it's on the ANJEE website.
Thank you for that, Laura. Laura is in charge of our membership on the ANJEE board, so we appreciate that. All righty, so thank you, Christine. That was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. There's a lot of amazing things going on. We appreciate your time here today, especially considering you are not in the state. So I appreciate you working around your schedule and making that work. Just a few reminders as we close out the session. And would you be able to put that evaluation link into the chat? So it's super helpful if you can just, it's a quick survey to fill out just to let us know how the session was and if it was useful and what other things you're looking for. Don't forget to subscribe to the ANJEE YouTube channel so you get access to all of the recorded sessions when they get posted. And then we also have field experiences this upcoming weekend. I know Anne is leading one at Sandy Hook, so there's a little plug for that. It's a lot very cool on a maritime forest, if I remember correctly. So you can, even if you already signed up for the conference, you can still go and register separately for a field experience. They're this Saturday and Sunday, kind of spread out throughout the state at a bunch of different times. There's some cool field experiences going on. You have until 4 o'clock today to do it. So you have about 2 more hours to sign up for field experiences. And thanks again to our conference sponsor, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, our anonymous donor, and the Institute for Natural History Arts. Thank you, everyone. And I hope you enjoyed the first kind of concurrent workshop session and enjoy the rest of the conference, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, guys, for this opportunity.
Well
Bye.
done.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Jeff, I'm not seeing that link to your survey in the chat box. Maybe you can just email it to us, please.
I'll see that it gets sent out to all the participants. It looks like I sent it to the waiting room group. Sorry about that, but I'll make sure that I'll email it out to the group as well. But for now, there you go.
Oh,
For the
okay.
3 of you that are still here. Hey, Anna.
Patience is a virtue, is now what all teachers say. All right, thank you. Yeah, I'll do it now because
Enjoy the rest of the conference.
I need a quick break before my presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, I get you. Bye.